Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. My name is Tom Seaman. This program I'm going to do today is called Embrace the Suck of Life. If you've never heard this term before, you might be wondering why I gave it this title and why I'm using this. And of course, I'm going to go over in this video why that is and how it came about. But Embrace the Suck of Life is really about honestly learning how to cope with difficult challenges in life. Because when things are tough, we naturally kind of want to run from them rather than embrace them. And this phrase actually came to me during a time when I was talking to one of my coaching clients who was going through some really tough times where not only she was dealing with a health issue, but not only her health issue, but everything else in her life basically sucked. And she couldn't see anything. She couldn't see the silver lining in anything at all. Even the positive things happening in her life, she was resisting. And so I just, in my mind, thought of saying to her, I think it would help if you learn to embrace some of these tough challenges. And I said, I think it would help if you could embrace the suck of life. And I thought about that some more after our phone call, and I ended up writing an article about that, which is right here. It's on my website. If you go to my website, which is tomseaman.com, if you click on the blog, and you can go in the search bar and put in Embrace the Suck of Life, and it will come up and it will go in detail about what that actually all means. Little did I know, actually, because I was actually, I almost titled my book, my new book I wrote last year, Embrace the Suck of Life, and I'm glad I didn't. But when I was looking around to see if anybody else had ever used it, I was surprised that nobody had. However, I did come across the term embrace the suck, which is a term used by the military to help soldiers during various difficult situations that are unavoidable, where they have to basically embrace it and deal with it, and because they can't run from it. So that term you may be familiar with in that context, but I'm not going to be talking about it in that particular context. This is going to be more in a non battle zone type of a situation. So it's really all about life and how difficult life can be and how important it is not to resist it. And I decided to pull this quote from one of the most popular self-help books ever written, which is called The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck, where it says in the very beginning, life is difficult. Once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life is no longer difficult. Because once it is accepted, the fact that life is difficult no longer matters. And this all kind of means that, we are aware of and we acknowledge that life is going to be tough sometimes, and to not be surprised when it is. So once we really accept that it's tough, it doesn't really matter as much anymore, because we know it's going to be, and we can find ways to work through it, which is what this program is all about. So embrace the suck of life. What does that mean to me? It means acknowledging that life is hard and filled with pitfalls, like I mentioned regarding that previous quote from that book. So here's a way of acknowledging it for me. I am going through a dark storm in my life. I'm going through a tough time. I'm going through whatever it might be. Just simply acknowledge it versus ignore it or try and distract yourself or run from it or try to avoid it. Acknowledge it, and then that's a way that we can better deal with it. It also means not resisting bad things that happen to us. So rather than, again, resisting and running and fighting and ignoring and distracting, how do I work through this? One moment at a time, one day at a time. My working phrase when tough things happen is, how do I make the best of a difficult situation? It also means not fighting something that's going to fight back and increase our suffering. So instead, for me, I like to think of things happening, good and bad. What is this teaching me? What can I learn from this? How can I use this to catapult me into another area or grow from it? How can I use this to my advantage versus getting angry? And that's something that a lot of us do. It's almost an automatic response, is to get angry when things don't work the way we want them to. So in a nutshell, it means that tough times, whatever they may be, they are not to be ignored, denied, covered up, or masked with drugs, alcohol, food, poor relationships, and behavior where we deal with the suck of life or life challenges in an emotionally reactive fashion. So where does most suffering come from? It comes from expectation, because most of us have a blueprint for how life should be. And when it isn't how we planned or how we want it to be, it can cause a lot of emotions like sadness, depression, and suffering. We have to understand, though, that things in life are going to happen that we're not going to understand or like, but maybe we're not supposed to understand everything. Maybe we're actually just supposed to learn to let go, accept, trust, and have faith that everything is going to work out. And if you think about it, most things almost always do. And if we learn to stop white knuckling life and trying to control everything, which we can't do because most things are out of our control except for how we respond to things. When we learn to stop white knuckling and trying to force life a certain way, we realize that things actually work out pretty well if we just pull back a little bit. So let life happen without resistance, because resistance to any adverse circumstance will increase its power over us. Now I'm going to share a real life example that I went through, that I'm still going through, that changed my life, where I did not embrace it and it took me down, and how I came back from that and where I am today as a result of a shift in my perspective, my attitude, and my approach to various challenges in life. So I developed in 2001 a very painful neurological movement disorder called dystonia. What is dystonia? It's a neurological movement disorder where muscles are involuntarily contracting and spasming, which causes repetitive movements, muscles that are twisting and turning and pulling, abnormal postures, and for some people there's a tremor. It's basically where the brain structures that are responsible for movement are not functioning for a variety of different reasons, and in everyone it's different, and in a lot of people it's unknown as to why it's happening. It's an idiopathic condition for many people. As it is in my case. So I don't know the exact cause of it. But what happens is that the brain structures are sending signals to the muscles in the body, various parts of the body, depending on which area is affected for you, telling it to involuntarily contract, which can cause all these symptoms I mentioned here. If you'd like to learn more about this, I've written an entire book about this condition. I've written a lot of articles. I've made videos, and you can also contact me directly if you want to learn a bit more about it. But it's the third most common movement disorder after Parkinson's and essential tremor, but it's not as well known as those two. In fact, most people I know have never heard of dystonia before. They think it's a country or something like that, but it's actually a very serious medical condition, which I've been living with for over 20 years. So if you want to learn more about that, just Google it, or please just send me a message and I'll help you out with that. So I'm going to share with you, though, how it manifested in my life when it was really bad. So this goes back to 2001 when I first developed it. You can see the intense muscle contractions in my neck. So I have what's called cervical dystonia, which means it affects my neck, but it could affect any part of the body depending on the individual. So for me, it affects my neck. I have worked through this to the point where I have found a lot of things to help manage my symptoms over the years, so things have improved quite a bit, but I still deal with everyday challenges with pain and spasms, contractions, and just a whole bunch of tough things. But I've found ways to like I said, to manage things better now. So it's definitely not as horrible as it used to be. It was so bad for me that the pain was literally just driving me to the floor, because I couldn't sit or stand for more than 10 minutes because the pain was so severe. So here I am laying down trying to get comfortable, and it was really tough. As you can see, how would somebody be comfortable when they're in this particular position? This was all happening involuntarily, by the way. I had no control over my head twisting and turning like this. I'm going to back up a little bit prior to 2001, because prior to 2001, I was a very active person in sports and travel and business and basically anything. I was doing anything and everything I wanted when I wanted, without much thought for what could happen if I lost everything. I was almost a professional athlete in 3 sports: golf, baseball, and football. Not because I developed dystonia, but because I just never pursued that beyond the level I had achieved. But if I pursued it, there was a good chance that I had the ability to be at a professional level, perhaps. So I went from this very high-level athlete and active person to someone who was literally laying on the floor all day long because they were in too much pain to sit or stand for more than 10 minutes. Like a lot of us, I took my health for granted, and I didn't realize the freedom it gave me until I lost it. All I had was just pure intense pain. I mean, my entire life was nothing but pain. It felt like I had no life and it was over. I didn't care about anything anymore, and I lost my will to live. So how did I cope with it? I dealt with dystonia, the pain, the anxiety, and depression. That also set in after all this happened because I pretty much lost everything in my life. Couldn't do anything. So I did what most people did. I grieved, I cried, I yelled, I retreated from the world. I didn't want people to see me. I didn't want to be around people. Plus, I was in too much pain to do anything anyway. So I ended up drinking a lot of alcohol to medicate the mental and physical pain I was going through. I had a horrible diet. I gained 150 pounds. I pretty much wanted to die. I mean that sounds melodramatic, but I really didn't want to live anymore. So because of all this misery and pain, I wanted to numb everything as much as I possibly could. I didn't know how to embrace what was going on. So what did I embrace? Food, alcohol, isolation. I didn't know back then how to embrace the suck of it all. So I embraced all these emotions of anger and sadness, avoidance, and just anything and everything I possibly could to avoid the world and somehow numb the pain I was going through just to get through the day. I would wake up every morning and go, oh boy, another day of this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I kind of lived the life of a victim, like life was happening to me and it was out to get me. And I'll go over that in a little bit in a moment. But here's a picture of me. This is me, not on the floor, obviously, because I had a couple of beers, as you can see here. That was my treatment of choice back then, along with medications, other things I was taking to try and help with my symptoms. And this provided me with enough relief where I thought, okay, let me just have a few drinks and I'll be okay. Well, that turned into a lot of drinks, and I also had a ridiculously horrible diet. So I went from a very active athlete at around 185, 190 pounds, 6'2", so good shape, to someone that just kept on growing and growing and growing. So here I am. This is my 33rd birthday. And you can see how large I am growing. Fast forward one more year. This is Christmas 2005. This is with a picture of me with my niece and nephew, which I didn't know was taken. It was during a period of time when I barely ever even looked in the mirror, let alone go near a camera, because I was so ashamed at how I looked. A month later, my niece and nephew came over because it was my birthday. And they gave me a birthday card and a printout of this picture on the card. And I kept looking at it, wondering why they would give me a picture of them with some guy I didn't know. So that's how much I didn't even recognize myself. That's how bad it had become. However, as eye-opening of an experience as that was, you'd think that I would change my lifestyle. Fast forward another year to the next Christmas, and this is me with another nephew of mine sitting on my lap, where I had gained an additional 40 pounds because I didn't change my lifestyle. I didn't really know how to, and I was afraid to, quite honestly, and I'll go over that in a moment too. So this is right before this major shift in my life took place, where I began to turn things around. So here I am. I'm 35 years old in this picture. And I am on the brink of a stroke, heart attack, diabetes. I was already on blood pressure medication, heart disease. I mean, you name it. I mean, I was just a prime candidate for all those things in my mid-30s. So between '01 and '06, I gained 150 pounds from this awful, horrible diet and lifestyle I was living. So I was living the life of a victim. Now, I'm not going to say that I chose the victim life, but I didn't know what to do. I just didn't know how to cope and deal with things. I didn't know how to, well, in other words, I didn't know how to embrace the suck of life. I didn't know how to deal with, and I didn't have the tools to handle what was going on. But I mentioned this thing about living the life of a victim because a lot of people do this in various situations in life, not just people with health conditions. And I want to go over this just a little bit because it's very important. So what is the victim mindset? It's a belief that things in life are happening to us and not for us, which is actually what was happening with that client I mentioned in the very beginning, who felt that life and the world were out to get her. and she was the victim of everybody else's and everything in the world. Everything was like she was the recipient of all the bad things that could possibly happening to her. So she felt like a victim, and I felt the same way in many respects. So the first option, life happening to us, it makes us the victim of circumstances. And the second option, where life is happening for us, meaning I have options here now. So this opens up our mind to possibilities. So I like to think of life happening for me, as I mentioned earlier about how, we have to go through tough times and be proactive rather than reactive to see how can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And that's what I try to do, and that's what's helped me quite a bit in a lot of different tough situations. So, most people that have gone and done some really great things in their lives, they've had to go through some really difficult, painful times to get there. Now, I'm not saying I've done great things in my life or anything like that whatsoever at all. I'm just saying that I think it's important we learn to embrace the sucky stuff in life as best as we possibly can and realize that they may be the fuel that we need to make some really cool things happen in our lives. So we have to create an overcoming mindset. And for me, I like to think that there's a reason for everything if we choose to see life this way. So if we choose this path, we can learn from things rather than be a victim and feel motivated to make a good life for ourselves despite whatever challenges we might be going through. So for me, my dystonia, which is not a deadly condition, it wasn't killing me, but my lifestyle was to try and cope with the misery of what dystonia is like. And I had to make a change, but I did not know how. So as I mentioned, there was a turning point that took place shortly after that picture of me, December 2006, with my nephew. I developed a stomach virus, and it literally saved my life. So how did it do that? Well, I was, for that 2-week period of time, in bed or in the bathroom. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't drink, couldn't eat, and I couldn't move much. I was alone with my thoughts, and they scared the hell out of me. I asked myself, okay, Tom, what are you going to do when you get over this virus? Because I knew that dystonia would probably be with me the rest of my life. And I came to terms with that. But I knew that the stomach virus was going to definitely disappear. And I wasn't sure, what am I going to do next? So this question terrified me because I knew I had to face myself, which I wasn't doing, and my suffering I was going through. I had to say, well, you're going to continue with this lifestyle that's killing you, or are you going to try and make a life for yourself the best you possibly can and just roll the dice and see what happens? So for me, a window of opportunity opened up, as they had many times previously, which I ignored. And this time I said to myself, Tom, you cannot pull down the shade. You cannot close down this window. You have to go through this and see, just make a fighting chance to change your life and get onto a track where you can maybe make something out of this life. So what did I do? I stopped drinking. I changed my diet. I got rid of all the pizza, fried foods, all that junk. And I changed it to fruits, veggies, meats, eggs, nuts, fruit, protein smoothies, that kind of stuff. Maybe you don't eat that way, but that's the diet that's worked well for me. I also began to walk every day to try and lose some of the weight. And I also followed a very dystonia-specific program of exercising, stretching, nutrition, massage, pain tools, etc., which has become a way of life for me now. Even another 15 years later after, I'm still doing a lot of the same things every day. I mean, my whole life is kind of, and I've created a whole lifestyle to help manage my symptoms. So it's still ongoing. So it wasn't like I did something for a short period of time, I got better, and then I stopped. I have had to maintain what I've been doing for over a decade now to maintain the improvement that I've achieved, which is still not perfect by any means. I'm not cured. There is no cure for dystonia. I'm not cured. I have pain every day. I have spasms. I get exhausted. I have headaches. I'm dizzy. I'm off balance. I have all sorts of junk going on, but I have to find ways to manage to get through them. I've also learned to calm my mind. That was a big thing because I had a very racing mind, which I still do, and I still have an anxious mind, but it's not as bad as it used to be. So I utilize meditation, prayer, affirmations, progressive muscle relaxation, visualization, breathing exercises, a lot of things where I become very aware of my body. When you're going through a suffering, painful experience, you are very aware of your body, but you try and avoid it and ignore it. And that's why the term embrace the suck is so powerful, because if we embrace it, that means that we become aware of and we acknowledge what we're going through, and we can check in with our body and we can find out what we need. I've got a video that's coming out that it's already out, I think, on self-care, and goes into more detail about that. And a lot of it's about becoming aware of our bodies, what we're going through in a very thoughtful way, and how we can work through some things. So when I incorporated all of these things, here I was in '06, and then here I am with my nephew. I tried to recreate this exact picture. So here I am with that same nephew, having lost 150 pounds. Now, I lost all the weight in 1 year, and I have photographs of me a year after, but I thought this would be kind of cool to do it side by side. So here I am on the left, nearly a week or two away from potentially a stroke or a heart attack at 35, at 340 pounds roughly, down to about 185 in the picture on the right, which I've maintained for over 15 years now. So what was the key to changing my life? What was the mindset that got me on a better track to dedicate myself to becoming as healthy as possible? Because my life at that time, after I got better from the stomach virus, my life was all about how do I become the healthiest person I possibly can. And that became my focus. And then that turned into a whole lot of other things, which I'll share in just a moment. So again, I had to embrace the suffering, because denial of any kind of suffering or pain we're going through, it's just going to prolong it. And at some point we have to face it, embrace it, and erase it. So I came up with that saying: face it, to embrace it, to erase it. And here's a little snippet from my new book. It says, despite the challenges we all face. So this is for all of us. This is not about people that have a health condition. It's for everybody. The biggest and most complex obstacle we will ever have to personally overcome is our own mind. We are not responsible for everything that happens in life, but we are responsible for the self-defeating thinking patterns undesirable experiences might create. So this was something that I was not really doing well. I wasn't being responsible with handling what was happening in my life. And there were a lot of self-defeating patterns of thinking that were creating worse circumstances than they were. So this picture here, to me, I think is a good way to kind of look at how life can be. Life has some thorny spots and life has some soft spots, just like a cactus. So if you want to know how life works, go ahead and hug a cactus. We have to learn that sometimes when we hug a cactus, or when we hug life, or we really embrace it, we're going to deal with some tough stuff along the way. But it's okay, because the tough stuff doesn't need to destroy us either. So it's really all about learning how to be okay with what we view as not okay, which is something I didn't do for a long time. And this helps us come to terms with the hand we are dealt, and then we can make the best of it. So when I changed my lifestyle and my mindset, this was a transformation that took place physically. I'm not showing you what happened to me emotionally and mentally, psychologically, etc. But this physical stuff from these pictures I'm showing you is because I want you to see how someone in a suffering mindset can look based on the way that they choose their behaviors and their lifestyle, that can turn them into someone who is morbidly obese and just living a suffering lifestyle, which I was. So these pictures are just a representation of what intense suffering is, and then another picture, of course, of what less suffering is, even though there's still some suffering and things going on in many ways, but much less than there used to be. So that's why I'm showing you these photographs, to see how transforming one's mindset, and many other things, of course, too. So it isn't just like, change your attitude, change your life. There's more to it than that. But this is how this can be very powerful. And regarding my dystonia, you can see the transformation that's taken place over the last 20 years. And again, I still have symptoms, but they're not as severe as they used to be. So regarding life challenges, none of us, no matter what's going on in our life, none of us are immune to the challenges of life. It's when adversity comes, how we respond to it, that's what determines what happens next. Life experiences become tragedies if we make the conscious decision to make tragedies out of them. If we choose to view all challenges as opportunities for personal growth, which I began to do, they can be a driving force for positive change. So how do you embrace the suck of life? It's about developing a healthy relationship with your pain and your suffering and learning to become friends with it, as crazy as it sounds. Become friends with it. Don't look at it as an adversary or something outside of you. It's a part of who you are. So accept it like anything else about yourself. So how do you know if you're actually really embracing the suck of life? Well, if there's something that once bothered you or had a hold on you and no longer does, that's a pretty good indication you're on a good path. So I look back at dystonia and pain, or I don't look back, I mean, I'm still going through it, and I think, well, was it a blessing or a curse? Well, I certainly wouldn't have picked that life if I had the choice. I would not have wanted to go through what I went through or continue to go through what I go through on a daily basis. However, I've learned so much from it: perseverance, patience, compassion, courage, strength, humility, a never give up attitude, and the belief that with every obstacle comes an opportunity. I had all these things within me before I developed this condition, but they became much stronger and much more important to me after developing this, and I use these as a springboard now. So in many ways, I have to be grateful for a lot of what I went through. So while it really kind of sucks, I have a lot of gratitude for what I've gone through and what I still go through. So all these lessons that I've learned from dystonia have given me now a life of meaning and purpose, which I didn't have before. So I said to myself, I don't know why this happened or why I'm going through this, but I refuse. I refuse to go through this for absolutely nothing. So how did I find meaning and purpose living with this ridiculously life-changing condition? I went back to school and I became certified as a professional life coach. I became an author. I wrote 2 books and I've written over 100 articles that have been published internationally. I've become a speaker and I've become a very active patient advocate. Here are some places I've been published. I'm not showing you this because I'm saying, hey, look at me, I'm great or anything. I'm not that kind of person. I'm actually quite uncomfortable sharing this, but I just want to show you what I've been able to do by embracing the difficult things and learning how to use them as a springboard to move forward. And so my passion in life now is educating and making people aware of dystonia, pain, and emotional, psychological challenges that people experience. And so the more places I can get things written, the better, because that then increases our chances of finding better help for people that are going through tough times. So here's a small little snippet of some of the places that I've been published and had interviews done and things like that. And also, as I mentioned, these are 2 of the books that I've written as well. So here's a guy that was one time living on his floor for years in severe pain, went to alcohol to try and alleviate some of the suffering and everything, gained all this weight, ended up losing all the weight and doing, some pretty cool things since then. So I say this and I share all this for you because you can do many of the same things. So no matter how deep and dark the hole may seem and feel, there is a way out. I promise you there is a way out. So with that being said, don't ever lose hope. Don't ever give up, because the day after we give up, that may be the day that our life changes. So as this little mouse with the helmet on, going for that cheese, is saying, never ever give up. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to contact me for more information, you can go to my website, which is tomseamancoaching.com. There's a place that there's a contact me link. You can sign up for a free coaching consult if that's of interest to you. I've got a lot of articles on there. I have podcasts and interviews and I have the blog and a lot of other resources. It's packed with tons of information. So check out the website and see if you might find some things that might be of help to you. You can also pick up one of my 2 books there, the Dystonia book and then the new book on the right. They're both on Amazon as well. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn and a bunch of other social media outlets. So feel free to contact me anytime, and also leave a comment or question below the video and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you again, and please be well.